Hello and welcome to the SportsPro podcast. New year, new me. No thanks. There's a reason it's called a comfort zone. So while I revert to type and display the usual lack of ambition, the good news is it's going to be a much more interesting 12 months in the world of sports business. We're kicking off the year by looking at the 10 people we think will be shaping the agenda in 2026, including a media mogul, a former theme park executive, and a Peace Prize winning president. We'll also be putting our collective neck on the line with some bold sports biz predictions for 2026. The panel reveal their New Year's resolutions they'll 100% be sticking to, not backed by popular demand as the quiz nobody asked for. And that's the SportsPro podcast, the show breaking down the story shaping sport. Here with me again and ready to hashtag lock in for 2026 is SportsPro editor Steve McCaskill. Hello, Steve.
Hi, Ed.
Fresh from his latest hit of Alpine Air, it's SportsPro reporter Josh Sim. Bonjour, Josh.
Hello, Ed.
And my fellow bearer of back pain, it's SportsPro's head of editorial, Sam Carp. Hello, Sam.
Yeah, we've been casted onto this sofa as a result, just to kind of separate the ones with the bad backs from the ones who don't have.
It's extra comfy, this one. I'm enjoying it. We've got a lot to cover in this episode, so let's crack on, shall we? Our 10 influencers of 2026 list has been released. It features our picks of the figures we think will define the sports industry year ahead. Question one, can you name them all? No, I'm joking, don't worry. I know some you say we're going to struggle with that off the top of your head.
I should be able to do it. I just published it. But yeah, let's not put that to the test.
No, let's start the year off nicely.
Yeah.
We should all know them, right, Josh?
Yeah, no, for sure.
In no particular order, I will name them because we do all know them, obviously. But for everybody, for those that don't, not naming names, we have, in no particular order, Mark Alera, the chair of Global Sport Group, Valerie Camilo, chair of the Women's Tennis Association, Nafisa Collier, basketball player for the Minnesota Lynx, Chief Executive of DAZN, Shay Segev, Scott O'Neill, Chief Executive of Live Golf, Chief Commercial Officer of Formula One, Emily Prazer, David Ellison, Chairman and Chief Exec of Paramount Skydance, Kirsty Coventry, President of the International Olympic Committee, Eddie Q, Senior Vice President of Services at Apple, and Donald Trump, President of the United States of America. I almost want to spin to a why nothing.
Putting Trump right at the bottom of that list.
I was wondering if you comment on that. As I say, in no particular order. I almost want to spin a wheel to decide who to talk about first, but given we're recording this a few weeks before the Winter Olympics starts, I think we should kick off with Kirsty Coventry. She's the first woman, first African to be elected president of the IOC. This is her first full year in the job, including the person who holds arguably the most powerful position in global sport, perhaps isn't a massive shock. But Sam, why is this a big year for the IOC and Coventry, as in Kirsty, not the city in England?
It's a big year for the city in England if they get the championship football team gets promoted as well. But no, I think you kind of summed it up there. There's going to be quite a lot of attention on Kirsty Coventry in her first full year, given partially because of the fact that she is the first female president of the IOC, and also because that role does not change hands very, very often. So yeah, there'll be quite a lot of attention paid to how she steers that organisation in a post-Thomas Bach world. There's also the Milan Cortina Winter Olympics happening, as you mentioned, starting in February, which kind of is the first games to take place under her stewardship, but a lot of the planning for that would have taken place before she was elected. The kind of delivery of that now is very much down to the organising committee, so you can't really judge her too much on that. But I think where we're really going to see some interesting developments this year is, what's her stance on Russia and Belarusian athletes returning to the Olympics? What's her stance on things like Israel? What's her stance on gender eligibility rules? We've got something coming on that in early 2026, supposedly. And also, will the host city selection process be a little bit more transparent under Coventry than it was maybe under Bach, which was one of the complaints, if you remember, 2032 was awarded fairly discreetly, conversations taking place behind closed doors. Coventry hit pause on that process in June last year, kind of to bring IOC members into the mix a little bit more, which is one of the things that they've been asking for. So I think basically, what we're going to see over the next 12 months is essentially what an IOC under Coventry looks like, essentially, and whether she truly is the sort of continuity candidate that people anticipate she would be, or whether she's going to put her own stamp on it.
Yeah, I think the host selection for 2036 is going to offer a real indicator of where the IOC is going, and where the Olympic movement is going. We've had a couple of selections now, which again were done, I guess, via negotiation rather than through an open process, partly through necessity. There were fewer cities bidding for the games due to the scale of it, but you're seeing a bit more interest now, and there's some very ambitious nations wanting to get those get the rights to host 2036. So it'll be really interesting to see how that is done and where where the games do end up, because there's still Saudi Arabia, India very keen. I think that's going to be a real, I guess, a bellwether of what's going to happen and what under her stewardship.
It is a sizable intro, it's fair to say. Josh, what about you? I'm actually, for people watching, I'm really admiring your posture, actually. It's excellent. Me and Sam was me and Sam as a slouch on the sofa, and there you are looking alert, giving Joe Hart a run for his money.
I feel like I'm about to deliver some good or bad news. But no, I think
what a SportsPro dog on the podcast.
I know, it's a cameo.
Not the last.
It's her first guest appearance. I mean, Sam and Steve have sort of laid out the priorities and all the things that she is to that she's going to tackle, and on top of that, we saw significant change with regards to the Olympic partner program as well. Some long-standing partners left, and some new ones entered as well. So whether we see more change to that will remain to see. Probably not, because given that a lot of those deals are sort of tied to games, maybe not. But I'm sure there'll be a lot of brands and companies that are sort of looking at what the IOC does, and whether or not they want to again commit to sort of doing deals or extend deals and such. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, we've already seen her make a decision in terms of not discontinuing or not even proceeding with the Olympic esports games. So that's maybe an indicator of her wanting to prioritize the existing things that the IOC are running as opposed to sort of launching new events. So there's a lot we're going to learn about sort of the IOC in her first year of direction. So yeah, keen to see how she goes.
I think to Josh's point as well, like as you mentioned, the Olympic esports games, something that's quite a big decision already. But I get the impression that she's not going to be continuing the status quo quite in the same way that people anticipated her to. She was obviously referred to as the continuity candidate, but I think kind of in some of her first public appearances, she's been quite firm on certain issues. She was very firm on Trump, like immediately after getting elected. As I say, there's been sort of like some decision already on the return of Russian athletes, at least at the youth level. And this probably isn't a great way to measure it, but and this probably says a lot about the algorithm on my X account. But she did pop up in a promotional video promoting the Winter Olympics, and I don't know, there was just a little bit more youthful energy from commentary than what you got with back, which probably isn't that hard, but it did just kind of like,
she's about 30 years younger than me.
She is, but it kind of just spoke, I don't know, you can kind of just see maybe there's a new energy being injected, and I'm not saying that she's suddenly kind of gonna start taking a political stand on issues that Bach was famous for not doing, and she'll obviously still sort of like toe that line of political neutrality, but I think she probably is going to be a little bit more open with the media, and there is going to be that transparency that maybe she did promise going into the role.
First unnecessary quiz question of the year, and much like dogs making a random appearance on the podcast, it probably won't be the last. Kirsty Coventry was elected president of the IOC after winning a majority on the first ballot with 49 votes. Who was second, and how many votes did they get for a bonus point?
I think second was Samaranch.
Correct. Guess how many votes?
Oh, gosh.
I can open that to the floor.
How many did Coventry get?
Yeah,
49.
49. 27?
Very close, 28. Samaranch was second.
I almost got that wrong. Always glad I didn't.
I feel like you did know it, and then you wanted to get it slightly wrong, so I wouldn't back say that. 10. Yeah. Sebco got 8 votes, and then a few others got, the rest got 2, 4, 2 between them. So it was a very decisive victory. Much quicker, I remember at the time, than we anticipated. Like we were getting the live stream ready. It was like, no, she won it. Like what?
We were locked in for multiple rounds.
Yeah, we were.
I mean, waiting for white smoke to emerge, and not much of a show, was it?
Yeah, exactly. I promise I won't be doing questions for every influencer, but the Winter Olympics is one of the biggest events of 2026. Another is the FIFA World Cup, which of course is being co-hosted by the US, Canada and Mexico. And President Trump has been very keen to put sport front and center of his return to the Oval Office. Steve, why is that?
Why is it? I mean, it's a global platform for him to project himself onto. It's another form of soft power as well. Another way to I guess it projects this vision of the US as well. And if we're talking about, we've got the World Cup, we also have the LA 28 Olympics. And Trump is probably more so than any other world leader I can imagine part of the World Cup. I can't recall a parallel. I know that Mark Carney and the Mexican president were there for the draw, but it was the Trump show at a venue that's recently been renamed in his honor. So, and look, FIFA often comes into a host nation, makes loads of demands with regards to tax, in terms of what it wants, in terms of access. That relationship has been slightly reversed in this instance, in terms of Trump saying that he will take games away from cities which he believes are unsafe, which coincidentally happen to be those run by Democrat politicians that he has issue with, and FIFA has said, yeah, he does have the power to do that, which I cannot imagine another instance, but that would have been a possibility. It's it's a FIFA show, and even more intriguing, this is the first time that FIFA's taking control of the organisation of the tournament. It's not in the hands of an organising committee, so that's why he's been so, I guess, visible during this World Cup next year. And again, we do have the Olympics in a couple of years' time, in another a state governed by one of his political adversaries in Gavin Newsom in California. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. So yeah, it's about the soft power. It's about the projection of himself and his vision for the US.
And we mentioned already winner of the FIFA Peace Prize, which at the time of recording, I'm seriously starting to question the credibility of.
Will he be the first person to be awarded and the first person to be stripped of the FIFA Peace Prize? It's I think it's kind of ironic, isn't it, that the first World Cup to have 48 teams, the most inclusive World Cup ever, is going to be impacted by probably like fairly insular policies that Trump has been impacting. His administration's visa and immigration policies. There's so many questions around that. There's the fans of some nations might have difficulty even getting to the tournament, given the restrictions that are currently in place. I know this isn't directly linked to Trump, but obviously there's a lot of talk about ticket prices at the moment and how extortionate those have become, and the accessibility of the event. And I think it's just quite interesting that, after Russia and Qatar, there were probably quite a lot of hopes that we'd have an unpolitical World Cup in 2026, but that certainly doesn't seem to be the case. And I'm sure FIFA and its partners weren't envisioning that these would be the storylines dominating the news as we approach kickoff, especially because this tournament has long been talked about essentially as the moment that football or soccer is truly going to catch on in the US. And I feel like that narrative is maybe starting to become a little bit less prominent now that Trump is back in office. I mean, when the tournament was awarded, and up until maybe a few years ago, it didn't really look like this was going to be the case. But as Steve said, all of a sudden, it is once again going to be the Trump show, and his presence at this World Cup, I think, will be pretty ubiquitous.
Yeah, I know we're here to talk about 2026, but it's also worth touching on the LA 2028 Olympic Games. Josh, is this, however Trump chooses to show up, is his presence at the World Cup kind of provide a preview of what the world and also the IC can expect at the Olympics in 2 years' time, 2 and a bit years' time? Yeah,
I mean, it's not only that, actually. I just remembered that the 2027 FIFA Women's World Cup is also going to be co-hosted by the US as well. And I know that from just reading reports, it seems like cities aren't sure whether they want to sort of bid for games. And I wonder whether the ongoing political uncertainty plays a part in that as well. But, looking at a year further at the LA 2028 games, he's already sparred with LA city officials when it comes to policing in the city in general. And, I'm sure that he will have a strong voice on how those games are run, whether, the likes of Casey Wasserman want him to or not. If you think about, already we're talking about sort of travel or potential travel restrictions for some countries for 2026. The Olympic Committee welcomes a lot more countries than that. and whether the IOC are then going to have to sort of, circumvent or play along and work and try and work with the White House is going to be interesting to see. But yeah, he's so unpredictable. Well, he's so unpredictable that sort of all these sporting organizations are sort of having to sort of change on the fly effectively, which makes him, definitely an influencer to watch, given that, everything he does sort of seems to have a massive impact.
I think calling Donald Trump unpredictable is like saying water's wet, isn't it? But I do definitely take your point. We've got one athlete on the list this year, and it's, as I mentioned, it's WNBA star Nafisa Collier. Sticking with you, Josh, as I know you've covered the WNBA and indeed Unrivaled Basketball League in detail. She's a lot more than a basketball star, isn't she? And that's why she's included in our list.
Yeah, I mean, she's obviously a very well accomplished player on the court, but just away from the court, obviously the VP of the Players Union, so has had tremendous say in the ongoing, as a time recording, ongoing CBA negotiations. She boldly, some might say, called out the commissioner in October, cited sort of a breakdown in their personal relations and sort of trust, and she has seemingly got a lot of support from the league as well, because a lot of players seem to back up her comments. So we've written extensively how sort of the growth of women's basketball and sort of that trajectory that it promises to sort of hit. Well, whether those players are going to feel all of those benefits and gain all of those benefits from the increased revenue, that's what they're fighting for, and that's what Collier is certainly putting her voice on the line for. And given her position as well as sort of the founder of Unrivaled, you mentioned that's just started this month. And the way that they've chosen to run that league, giving players equity and like a massive increase in pay compared to the average salary in the WNBA. It seems that she's determined to sort of leave a very lasting impact for women's basketball players. And I can't think of too many athletes who have that sort of voice and say in terms of how the financial conditions and sort of the playing conditions that their future counterparts are going to feel.
She's reshaping the future of women's basketball from the inside, and that's kind of the world we live in now, in sport anyway, where athletes taking a much more hands-on role, whether it's commercial deals or in this case, governance. How big a presence is she going to have then in the next 12 months, in terms of particularly with the CBA as well, the WNBA?
Oh, massive. I think it's, I think everyone wants women's basketball and the WNBA to be successful. I mean, it would be, in my view, catastrophic if there is a labour stoppage at this point in the league's, I guess, in the league's journey. Kathy Engelbert for her part, wants sustainable growth. It's been a journey of, I guess it's been a slow build, and it's a big catalyst in recent years. And the revenue's increasing, but profitability isn't. But if you look at Collier and the players' point of view, they're building things for the future. But athletics and basketball, it's a short career. They will feel they deserve to benefit right here, right now. If the league is benefiting from their star power, their abilities on the court, then why shouldn't they benefit? Why should it just be future generations? And I think that's the crux of it. So it is very interesting when you compare the US to other leagues, and you have the draft system, which some might argue keeps wages down, reduces the rights of the athletes, but you have really strong players' unions in the men's and women's professional leagues, and that provides a lot of power to the players who have positions of authority in the association. So huge responsibility, huge amount of influence. It's going to play, it's not over the top to say a massive role in the future of WNBA and how it does continue that steady growth it's enjoyed over 30 plus years, and where it's going next, because there's a real opportunity to join that top tier of leagues, perhaps more so than any other of the challenge properties in the US.
And she labelled the WNBA's leadership as the worst in the world.
I think what she did over the past sort of like 12 months, and what she'll kind of continue to do over the next 12 months, because I think also like a lot of our listeners, especially those based in Europe, might not be that aware of Nafisa Collier and what's going on in the WNBA. And I think actually what she's doing is kind of like redefining the power dynamics a little bit between league administrators and athletes themselves. She's kind of shown in partnership with obviously Brianna Stewart in launching Unrivaled that there is kind of another way. And I think in women's sports especially, that is kind of like leverage that the athletes have. And when she called out Kathy Engelbert and used the term that you just used there, that was because she knew that she had leverage. She knew that she's kind of like,
her peers as well.
She'd built up that trust with Unrivaled. With her kind of like just her status within the game as well, was one of the sort of like biggest stars in the WNBA. So I think just kind of that's also where her influence is going to be felt. I think it's not just about what happens with this CBA, which will be kind of one of the biggest deals of this year, but I think it's also going to kind of have a big impact on the future of female athlete compensation in terms of what the outcome of that is. Because as I say, Unrivaled is kind of showing that there is another way, and it is a way of kind of applying pressure to the kind of existing those who hold the power at the moment, and just a sign they do need to kind of listen to their athletes and change, or else they're kind of going to go elsewhere and maybe even start something for themselves.
Well, exactly, and I think her stance is kind of reflective of the expectations for women's basketball now. Higher standards, better pay, better conditions, and audience appetite as well. We've got 3 media figures on the list, but Steve, I know you were particularly keen to talk about David Ellison. Not the best end of the year for him with the Netflix deal, and we'll get to that obviously. But is it fair to say he's going to play quite a large role in deciding what the future of media is going to look like in the next 12 months and even well beyond that?
100%, I think, irrelevant of what does happen with WBD. We were talking about Trump before. He is an ally of Trump. I think if you look at what's happened if you look at US broadcasting and to be honest, global broadcasting in general is about to undergo a period of consolidation. There's going to be lots of people wanting to get deals over the line. And if there's one thing that the Trump administration has shown, it's that it sees these as almost transactional. So it's like, what can you do for me to get this over for me to give this approval? And so if you look at that, look what's happened to CBS News and in terms of the editorial output there, that's a consequence of that at play. Now, how that relates to sport is, if you've got someone shaping the future of US media, it's going to impact how sports divisions operate, how media organizations apply to sport. With regards to the WBD deal, I don't think it is over yet. I think there's a lot of hurdles to overcome. The Netflix deal has been approved by WBD's board, but the way public markets operate means they can still make a hostile bid. I think that's going to rumble well into 2027, to be quite honest. But in the next 12 months, you're going to see lots of machinations behind the scenes in terms of where the US broadcast market is going. It's the biggest media market in the world, biggest sports market in the world, and it's what happens there is going to influence other parts of the world too. So even if that Netflix deal doesn't quite Netflix or WD deal doesn't go over the line, it's going to have a massive impact. And he's one of the biggest, I guess, deal makers, game changers in the US today.
I think also, like, if you really, as you said, like, there's a long way to go on this, on what happens with WBD, and that will be, as you say, a story that defines 2026. But if Paramount were to kind of pull it off eventually, as you say, that combines sports portfolios which include like the NFL, the Masters, college football playoffs, MLB, NHL. That's a portfolio that is rivaling ESPN at that point. And I don't know, obviously hypothesizing quite a lot in terms of what the executive structure would look like on the back of that. But if they were to pull it off, Ellison becomes one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful person in US sports media, to be honest, on the back of that. So I think it's pretty fair to say that, he 100% is going to be one of the big influences for this year. And then you've also got, obviously, the rights acquisitions that they've just made with the UFC, Champions League as well. And then, a smaller kind of maybe footnote in this conversation, but an important one for our industry, is the potential impacts that Paramount might now start to have in the European media rights market. Obviously, I don't think many people saw them coming for the Champions League rights at the end of last year, but obviously they have big intentions of growing the subscriber base for Paramount Plus. So it'd be interesting to see what kind of moves they make over on this side of the world.
Yeah, and as Josh will know, they're a sizable interest in Australia as well. And so even regardless of that deal, I mean, if that deal does come off, that again is another game changer when you consider Eurosport gets thrown into the mix, TNT Sports in the UK and Latin America. So independently of that deal and because of that deal, there are a few people that can have such a big impact on sports media the next 12 months.
Quick question before we take a break for part one. David Ellison has been a producer or executive producer on how many Mission Impossible films? 4. Any advances on 4?
How many Mission Impossible films?
Just say
then
8, because I think there's 8 in total.
I'll just say 6 then.
No points. 5.
Oh,
Ghost Protocol, Rogue Nation, Fallout, Dead Reckoning Part 1, and The Final Reckon. There you go.
were they the good ones? Or
I mean, as if I've seen them all. I did watch the last one on a plane. Actually, it was all right.
I mean, Mission Impossible 2 has the Limp Bizkit theme tune, so...
No further questions, Your Honour. That'll do for part 1. If you want to read profiles on all of our 2026 influencers, head sportspro.com. We'll be back just after this. You're now tuned in to the SportsPro podcast. Welcome to part 2 of the SportsPro podcast. We've rattled through our influencers for 2026. Now it's time to hear each of our watertight predictions for the year. Sam, I'll come to you first, as yours involves Scott O'Neill, one of our influencers. And it's the PGA Tour and Live Golf will move on from their merger.
Yep.
Why that?
Yeah, sorry, Scott. But
Welcome on the podcast.
yeah, I think it's just built off basically what we've seen over the past 12 months, to be honest. We haven't really heard much about this merger since the first half of last year. Even Trump, who said that it would be one of the things that he could get done very quickly, hasn't been able to find a solution. And then, as you say, what we've seen in the past 12 months is Scott O'Neill come in as the chief executive at Live, who he obviously joins with a very strong reputation from his time at Harris Blitzer Sports and Entertainment and the kind of culture that he implemented there. And there's also kind of, I'd say, a more sort of like amicable face and figurehead for the tour than Greg Norman perhaps was when he was in charge. But we've also seen the PGA Tour hire a new chief executive. We've seen Live Golf do a raft of commercial activity, deals with Salesforce, HSBC. At the same time, we've had the DP World Tour making big commercial moves, renewing their title sponsorship deal, AWS coming in on a fairly sizable partnership as well. And then at the same time, you've got the PGA Tour undergoing a sort of like major competition review being led by Tiger Woods. You've got Brian Rolapp talking about scarcity. So in amongst all that, I just don't really feel like those are the actions of three organisations expecting to become one anytime soon. And I think especially when you look at Live now, you just had Brooks Koepka become the first kind of major profile exit. There's quite a few contracts coming up for renewal. There were rumours or reports at the end of last year about cash flows at the public investment funds. There were significant
Something I must have here.
Yeah, significant losses again for Live last year. So, and all of a sudden, so they're maybe looking a little bit weaker. So I just don't, as I say, I can't really see that merger happening in the way that it was kind of first promised in 2023.
And Rory McIlroy is another one to sort of question the long-term viability.
Yeah, he's obviously fairly close to it. As he's always been fairly outspoken on the issue, and he's sort of been saying at the start of this year that he's not entirely sure how much longer Liv can continue without making a return. I'm sure Scott O'Neill will know that better than us, but that's kind of what's led to my prediction essentially.
Steve or Josh, do either or both of you want to play devil's advocate and say Sam's barking up the wrong tree? Or what are your thoughts on his prediction?
Penny for John Rahm's thoughts. He probably thought it was going through.
Many millions of pennies.
I mean, yeah. No, I just wanted to follow up on a point that Sam made that I think really does need a bit, I want to double down on, that is Brian Rolapp. That he was, I think most people consider he would have been a replacement for Roger Goodell at the NFL if Roger Goodell stood down tomorrow. So that's, unless he's been told that's not happening anytime soon, which probably isn't, you don't join an organisation, the PGA Tour, if you don't think that, it's going to be, you'll have job security for the next couple of years. I'm not saying that, he'd be ousted in the event of a merger, but it's a huge appointment for the PGA Tour, and I think that's a huge vindication of its, not vindication, but a huge indicator of where it thinks things are going, and yeah, new TV deals independent of each other, new sponsorship deals independent of each other. You're seeing Live Golf become more like a traditional golf organization by going to 72-hole tournaments. I don't think it's as clear cut as it was, as shocking as it was when it was first announced. I don't think it would be a shock if it's just going to continue.
Yeah, I think sorry, Josh, go ahead.
No, the only thing I would add is I wonder if those running their respective tours have as much interest in a merger anymore, because the PGA Tour now has that investment from the strategic sports, I think they're calling it, but like Fenway and Arthur Blank, that sort of consortium of US sports team billionaires. So it's not as if the PGA Tour now are reliant on needing more investment, given they've just received some. And you mentioned sort of those reports that the Saudi PIF may no longer look at making big outlays or in the short term. And given they've, other projects like the Neon Smart City, and I think there was a coffee chain that's also run into some difficulties. You wonder whether, because I think part of the deal was the PIF would invest in the commercial entity, and you wonder whether they have as much interest now in doing so. So it almost feels as though now, like a merger, if it was to happen, it would be obviously for the players, for the broadcasters and sponsors would welcome it. But I don't know. I wonder what if those running those respective tours still see the business case for it and still as invested in it from a financial sense as well as an emotional sense. Because yeah, like you said, it seems like both tours are very happy now to sort of continue doing their own thing. So that I wonder if those running it have any interest in merging it.
I feel like there's a chance to a prediction within a prediction, almost like saying that the WBD deal will be done before the future of the major golf tours will be decided.
Oh yeah, who knows? It just feels like it's even messier to sort out now, and really strong executives on both sides of the table now. Like, how on earth would that resolve itself if a merger were to happen? Like the only thing I would say is like that competition review that the PGA Tour is currently undergoing, like Rolap keeps using the word scarcity, so you can kind of make an educated guess that the PGA Tour calendar is going to shrink, and does that then open up space for live tournaments somehow to be integrated in some way, shape or form? Like, I don't know, and maybe that's why they're sort of making this move to 72 holes and whatever. Like, I don't know if that's sort of an avenue towards that, but it just still seems way too messy to kind of be resolved, especially over the next 12 months.
Yeah. Steve, your prediction is a bit broader, and it's sport will find even more unconventional ways to bring content to market. What unconventional ways sprung to mind for you? Carrier pigeon, analog radio, reviving Bebo. What were they?
Steve McCaskill's LinkedIn profile.
I'm acquiring rights personally. That's pretty unconventional.
That time.
Get my commentary and everything. I think there's been lots of talk about the future media rights and how the old models are. Some people say they're dying. They're not dying. I think pay TV or free-to-air TV is still going to be hugely important for the years to come, especially across the different channels. I mean, the BBC is not going anywhere. Sky Sports isn't going anywhere. ESPN's not going anywhere. But what we are seeing is for properties that aren't that top tier, it's making less sense to be stuck on. With all respect to this channel, to Quest or something like that. I don't see how it's going to find an audience. So you need to go where your audience is. And, we're looking at deals like the Bundesliga in the UK with the overlap with Mark Goldbridge, YouTube channel. That's just a new way to find an audience. There's lots of, think pieces like, oh, this streamer has beaten Sky to the Bundesliga. That's not it. If Sky wanted those right, it would have bought them. And the Bundesliga would comment there. But they're looking to find, new ways to find that audience. You're seeing live games being streamed through EAFC because that's where an audience is. You're seeing Casa TV acquire rights in Brazil. You're seeing Zach Nani in France acquire rights for pretty, not. Casa TV is working with people on the World Cup. That is top tier. Zach Nani's working on, for French under 21 football, among other things. These aren't insignificant rights. Yes, they're not top, but they're trying something else to find an audience, trying to find, do different things with the concept, because there is so much out there. The audience is so splintered and they want things where they are, and that's an opportunity for someone. So I think we're going to see this year more than previous years, just more experimentation. We're seeing, the this is not the end of the traditional media rights model. Let's get that clear. But it's definitely, we're seeing some of the things that people may have predicted 5-10 years ago start to happen. And I'm really interested to find out what will happen. I mean, I don't know, let's say exclusive rights on Strava or something like that. That's the sort of thing I'm thinking of, find an audience, either find it engaged or a new one. And I'm interested to see where the industry goes.
Is it about sort of embracing the chaos and the unorthodox nature of the broadcast business of broadcasting at the moment, perhaps? I mean, I imagine if you're a lower tier sports property, this is a huge opportunity actually to still court audiences if you don't have to lean into the traditional model too much. Sorry, that's a question for the room.
There's an element of like being ready to cede some control as well, and especially over kind of like, I think editorial control is like, that's one of the things that I found really interesting about like the Bundesliga's deal with Mark Goldbridge, for example. Like, he's very outspoken. Anyone who's
way of saying
with stuff on, anyone who's seen clips of his stuff on social media, and it's kind of like, what's the boundary with that kind of thing? To what extent can they kind of criticize what they're watching while they're watching along and that kind of stuff? But there is an element of like embracing the chaos. I think like the interesting thing is just going to be what the next evolution of this is, I guess. Obviously last year it was kind of broadcasts on influencer owned channels. I wonder if like this year we might start to see, we've seen it already a little bit, but like if we'll start to see some rights holders broadcast some of their live content through like athlete channels, for example. Like if you've got, for example, especially in sports where you maybe have an athlete whose profile is really sort of seems to be bigger than the profile of the sport itself at this stage of its sort of commercial development, then maybe that would be an opportunity. So I don't know, for example, could you have like some rugby sevens games broadcast on Ilona Mayer's TikTok or like something like that? I feel like that would be kind of, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw something like that happening this year as the kind of next evolution of it. But I think that's maybe probably the way that we're going.
Yeah, I think athletes are becoming their own media platforms, their own data platforms. That absolutely makes sense. I think another trend we could see is not quite royalty-free rights, but you make all your assets available to content creators, to streamers, to athletes, and just see what happens. Obviously, there should be some safeguards in there. But I mean, I think that was something FIBA tried a couple of years ago by partnering with us, as part of a creator program. If creators or athletes have this following, it makes sense to use them. Yes, you might lose a bit of direct control. You might lose a bit of direct monetization. But in terms of reach and being able to monetize and engage fans through other means, that's hugely valuable.
You mentioned athlete profiles and broadcasting, and that sort of teases up quite nicely for your prediction, Josh. You put the next women's sports star will come from volleyball. It was obviously a very busy year for volleyball in 2025. Why volleyball specifically as the sports?
Because he plays it.
That's true. I should declare I'm an amateur volleyball player. That's my bias covered. I guess, and this is centered around the US. I know volleyball's pretty popular in Europe, like in Italy and in various countries. And obviously I think the World Championships was recently in China as well. So it has a footprint in Asia as well. But 2026 in the US, you have League One Volleyball, still shortened as LOVE. I may just say LOVE just to confuse everyone. For this next,
confused us last year.
It is. I believe in LOVE. In terms of how you will. So they're now underway in their second season with significant momentum. I remember last year we talked about some leagues that were debuting in 2025, and under the radar, LOVE had a pretty solid debut season, and they've welcomed.
It brought like a marriage.
Well, hopefully it's a long-lasting one. But they welcomed Kim Kardashian's Skims brand as a commercial partner. Chase, the financial company. They've also signed up Versant, the USA Network, and they've now made a sort of Game of the Week program for Wednesday to sort of show marquee matches. They've welcomed investments from the San Antonio Spurs ownership group, the Houston Texans ownership group, and they've got plans to expand further. Alexis Ohanian's come on board for the LA team, and the San Francisco team as well coming. So, we've referenced sort of the scale of the US sports machine. And I think with increased exposure, increased both on broadcast and commercial, and with increased investment and just ambition to sort of expand further, I think Love has a good chance of doing so. Equally, there is also the Pro Volleyball Federation, an existing league that is now merged with Major League Volleyball. There was a chance we were going to have 4 US volleyball leagues in 2026. That's now become 3 because those 2 have merged. But again, they have a broadcast deal with CBS, so they already get exposure on a main network. And seeing their sort of social following also sort of climb considerably. So I think with all those sort of places, all those sort of pieces sort of filled, I think a US volleyball women's player probably has a good chance of sort of becoming a major star, especially given that I think ESPN also sort of said that their college volleyball season was the most watched, the 25 season was the most watched on their platforms. So similar to in that the way Caitlin Clark sort of came up in college basketball, then sort of became a national phenomenon. I think there's a good chance that someone from the volleyball world sort of follows suit.
For the non-volleyball players in the room, do we think Josh is onto something, or do we think a household name is going to come from sports that are sort of further along, particularly on the women's side, like your footballs and your basketballs?
I think I see there's some similar dynamics basically there's some dynamics in volleyball which I think could help Josh's prediction come to fruition. If you think about women's basketball and the reason why someone like Caitlin Clark and even now like Paige Beckers have become so popular is partly because of the growth of NIL and also just the sort of the popularity of that sport at the college level. And women's volleyball is another sport that is really, really popular in colleges in the US. So if you have kind of some athletes who are leaning into that a lot more, building their social media profile, I think now that you then have that kind of professional landscape developing in the way that Josh just kind of summarized, and with some like really significant investors in there, there's Alexis Ohanian, as Josh said, David Blitzer has invested in one of the teams as well. So like serious, investors who have traditionally been involved in men's sports and spending big money. I think that does kind of, there's a few factors there that could contribute to an athlete from volleyball kind of going on that similar sort of trajectory and maybe coming out of nowhere a little bit in the way that others have over the past few years and catching us all off guard. Because I think also, if you talk about football, obviously there are going to continue to be stars from football, but I think a lot of those we know about already, whereas I think some of the most interesting ones that have emerged in recent years are kind of those stories that you don't know as much about and kind of then sort of catapulted in that different way.
Final prediction, and I would say we saved the best till last, but it's mine. It's the NFL will open the door to bigger private equity investment. We've seen multiple deals be struck. I would say the interest from institutional investors has been steady. I don't think there's been a deluge of deals. One of the reasons is that, for me, is the relatively modest stake size on offer, which can put off certain investors who like to be quite a bit more hands-on. Roger Goodell has hinted that they might allow private equity funds to buy more in the future. He suggested it might be years. I think it's going to be sooner than that. For me, it's an obvious decision for a league that wants to remain ahead of everybody else when it comes to driving value. Does anybody think differently? Or
no, I think we're going to see the NFL try and renegotiate its broadcast deals. Maybe as soon as this year, that's going to achieve a lot more value. That's going to increase the value of individual franchises even further, make them more impossible to sell. And I think you're going to see owners want to release some of that value and benefit from it. So yeah, this absolutely happen. I think the only question is whether they open the process up to more firms. Of course, you have to go through that approval process. Yeah, absolutely. I think to stay ahead of the other leagues, you look at, if looking at the NBA with its new TV deals, baseball is about to go through its round of negotiations. So stay ahead of the curve, benefit from those broadcast deals. Again, the NFL acts in the interests of its owners. So yeah, no brainer really.
Yeah, I think also what we're going to see, irrespective of whether it's in the NFL, is just so much private equity investment in sport this year. You can see they're all tooling up for it. We mentioned that Mark Alera was one of our 10 influencers for this year. He's chairing CVC's new global sport group. CVC actually are one of the firms that are permitted to invest in the NFL as part of a consortium. So maybe that's one route that they'll be looking at. There they have kind of like been more interested in leagues, but I think we're kind of like about to see a bit of a new era, I guess, of like private equity investment in the sport. You've had that sort of post-COVID cut price deal making period, whereas now you've got an increased number of firms who are actually recognizing the value of it, and also not just with teams and leagues, but also like sports adjacent organizations. Like we've seen agencies become like really hot property now. So I think maybe that's another area that we're going to start to see more investment this year.
Ironically, you mentioned COVID there. I think the resilience of sport during COVID is exactly one of the reasons why they're looking to invest in sport. It seems, there's a high entry point for the most blue chip properties, but pretty resilient. They can offer good returns, particularly for properties that are in a growth phase that do look like they've increased their broadcast deals. And again, demand for sport, especially team sport, is relatively inelastic. People, I guess there's an affordability point, that's true, but in terms of fandom, it's not really going to go away too easily.
You all agree with me. Excellent. What a lovely start to the year.
Yeah, we never disagree on this podcast, do we? And maybe that should be our New Year's resolutions, disagree more.
Yeah. It wasn't just the four of us who gave our predictions. Several other SportsPros gave theirs as well. So head to sportspro.com to read those. Before we go, who has an unrealistic New Year's resolution they want to share that they will have to stick to now that they've said it to the world?
I just said mine. I'm going to disagree with you all more.
Not drink more, eat or exercise less.
Yeah.
So realistic, unrealistic.
The lines blur with you, Steve, and big.
Well, my resolution is to not simply pay someone to do household tasks. I can do it.
Painfully middle class.
Dreadful. I can do it. I've shown I can do it. But when it comes to something like, someone's going to do it better. The only exception is I am going to get someone to mount my new TV. That I can't tell.
Sorry? Oh, sorry. I see. Install it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's mirrors and televisions. No, I'm not doing that. But I will install that stairgate. Priorities.
So you haven't deleted the TaskRabbit app just yet?
No, I'm getting a proper aerial man to do my television. But
your son break your other TV?
He did, yes. And part of the reason it has to go high is because to get out of his throwing range. But bodes really well to become the first British-born NFL quarterback, but less so for my consumer electronics.
So you've given up on the darts dream then?
I mean, darts is a good one, but get that NFL money.
You, Josh?
Mine sounds considerably more lazy than Steve's, I think. Mine was just
paying someone to mount a TV.
Again,
pretty lazy.
Priorities.
I mean, mine was just to read more for pleasure. Read more. I read
SportsPro content.
Yeah, I was going to say I read SportsPro's content, obviously, for pleasure. But I mean, reading more books, because I find when I go home, especially over the winter break, I go home and then sort of end up rereading all the books I used to read as a teenager. So I feel like I need to do that a bit more.
It's very wholesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mine's actually too different from Josh's. I just less time on my phone is the main one. Especially an hour before bed. I think that's something we can all aim for. But and substitute that time with reading probably.
So we can track your progress by your screen time on
last seen on Teams.
Yeah. Judge yours by Goodreads and mine by my bank balance. So yeah.
How about you? Yeah. How about you, Ed? Surely it's more exclusives, isn't it?
Yeah. Mine is the same as last year, which shows you how well last year's went, and it's stretched more.
Not on this podcast, though.
No, that's physically not like my sort of my elasticity when it comes to sort of flexibility work and stuff. Although that would be, maybe quite helpful. But no, get the lunges in, get the downward dogs. I think become more supple, basically.
There'll definitely be a way we can track that, I think.
Biomechanics on the podcast on YouTube. We can follow your posture throughout the year.
So I try and do a squat at the start of every episode, and then we can sort of see how low I can get. I mean, over the year.
You did that before, and we said no.
That is it.
No, I'm not in from that. Enough. That is it. Enough, Steve. Got Dano in my eye. Sorry. So Orlando, Steve. Yeah, okay.
Steve's finally raising his voice.
I know.
Well, I'll make sure to keep you all on track with my progress. 34 going on 84, but that'll do for today. We're up and running for the year. It's all plain sailing from now, I promise. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Ed.
Thank you, Josh.
Thanks, Ed.
And thank you, Sam.
Cheers, Ed.
Thanks for tuning in. Catch you next time. Leave us a nice review if you can. If you want to get in touch, you can email us at editor@sportspromedia.com, and make sure to check out our other podcasts, Stream Time, New Era, and Lights Out. The Sports Pro podcast is produced by Dano Ling. Our executive producer is Manny Gill. This episode was recorded at Sports Pro Towers in London.